This is the biggest weekend in Big 12 history. Let's pick every single one of these games. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. We will start by picking all 8 games in the league. In the middle segment, let's talk about how we are a lock for the college football playoff after a Tulane loss to Memphis, and we'll end it with the travesty that is the Big 12 not having a rivalry week. If you hit subscribe, I get to keep my job. I am feeling thankful to be in this chair hosting this show on the biggest weekend in the history of a conference. We've never had 16 teams. We've never had 8 teams competing for glory. There will be, at the end of this 48 hours, if you're listening to this show prior to kickoff of Colorado and Oklahoma State, we will determine in this 48-hour span who is going to represent our league to fight for a national championship. If we're only able to send one, we haven't even narrowed it down to less than half the league. 8 teams, 50% of these teams still have a shot to play for a national championship with the Big 12 across their chest. And I think it's really cool that I get to talk about it today. I think it's very cool that we get to witness what these 2 days will bring us. Oklahoma State, Colorado, Boulder, today. I'm still siding with Colorado, but I've come down off my take Colorado minus 16.5. The reason being is with Smith at quarterback, a young, wily quarterback for Oklahoma State going out there, and when they get to play game wrecker, season wrecker, conference championship wrecker, they've got something to play for. If nothing else, another team's downfall. Will Oklahoma State win? No. Will they compete? Yes. I said 34-17 earlier this week. I'm now going to move that to 38-31. Competitive game. Colorado wins it. But in the end, Oklahoma State at the very least covers and competes thanks to a young quarterback who puts them in a position to do so. The metrics don't have Smith on their radar. Utah and UCF. This is a battle between 2 teams that are both in not good spots. Both 4-7. 1, Utah, 1-7 in the Big 12. 2, UCF, 2-6. They were both in my top 5 preseason. Utah was my conference championship runner-up at the beginning of the year. I do think they get the last laugh of the season. I think Utah, who is a 9-point underdog, 9.5 now in this game, Utah, with the Italian Stallion hopefully leading the way, wins it at UCF. This is an almost 10-point upset. I am going with the Utes to knock down the Knights, drop them to 4-8, and we begin to question Gus Malzahn, who likely comes back next year, but his future past that could be murky. I'm going with the Utes because of that defense, and because in a game where neither of these teams has really anything to play for, I think it comes down to the head coach who's been there longer, who's instilled himself into a program longer. And if this is Kyle Whittingham's final game for the Utes, I don't think it is, but if it is, they'll put on a show for him. Utah wins in Orlando. Take you to Saturday. Baylor and Kansas kick off at 11 a.m. This game in Waco, Texas. It has flipped. Baylor, a 1.5-point favorite. It is now Kansas -1 at the time of recording. And I'm siding with the Jayhawks. Devin Neal, an 1,100-yard rusher. Jalen Daniels finally playing the way that we wanted him to. Luke Grimm leads both these teams when it comes to receiving yards, his 617. Baylor, while they've had flashes of very good wide receivers, nobody above 600 yards. With that, give me the Kansas Jayhawks. These are 2 of the 3 hottest teams in the entire league. If you ask ESPN's FPI, they'd say Kansas has a 52% chance of victory. While I went back and forth on this for the entire week, I'm siding with Kansas here in the end. With Jeff Grimes coming back home, he knows Dave Aranda, and Dave Aranda knows Jeff Grimes. Here's the difference. Grimes coached a lot of those kids on the Baylor defense. Yeah. Aranda didn't coach any of the kids on the Kansas offense. Who gets the upper hand? I think Grimes by a hair. And while both teams have massive momentum, look at Kansas win last week. That is a moniker of maybe the hottest team in the Big 12 because of how they beat Colorado. A complete stomping of the Buffs. And Sawyer Robertson's great, but it's not Shedeur Sanders. This game, where 2 teams who are playing pretty good defense, but exceptional offense square off. I'm going with the Kansas Jayhawks, 34, the Baylor Bears, 31, a 3-point win for KU. Lance Leipold, they're going bowling. Kansas add them another Big 12 team in the postseason, and another good positive for the Big 12 as they find a way to make it to the Liberty Bowl. Kansas beats Baylor. Baylor drops to 7-5. West Virginia and Texas Tech. In a league of anarchy, I think that continues. I'm going to go with West Virginia on the road against Texas Tech. Why? Well, it seems like the players for West Virginia are getting up more and more for Neil Brown. And while Baron Morton and Taj Brooks have both been solid, Morton at 25 touchdown passes, he'll eclipse 3,000 yards for the season. We are finally seeing West Virginia click more so. The Mountaineers have won 3 of 4. The only game they've lost was to arguably the hottest team in the Big 12, one of them at the very least, in the Baylor Bears. Outside of that, albeit close, West Virginia has beaten UCF, Cincinnati on the road, Arizona on the road as well. For Texas Tech, they beat Colorado. They beat Iowa State. They've won 2 of 3, but they've also lost 3 of 5. While we saw them hot earlier this year, I don't trust this Tech team because their defense has been so poor. They allowed 41 to Colorado, 48 to Oklahoma State. And I think this week, the very eclectic offense of West Virginia, they can get it done in multiple ways, especially with multiple guys on the ground, finds a way in Lubbock. Arizona State. I'm going with the Wildcats. Arizona wins this game. 9-point underdogs. Rivalry game. We have seen, there was a point this season, 3 weeks ago in the Big 12, where 50% of our games were one-score games in conference play. That is absurd. That's what happens here. Reason being, Arizona State's defense is 95th in the country on 3rd and 4th down. They can't find a way to get off the field defensively. Arizona's offense can throw the ball, which is good for you on 3rd and 4th down. Arizona has one thing to play for. Spoiler. Keep their rival Arizona State, who they didn't even want to be a university, out of the college football playoff conversation. With that on their shoulders, an afternoon game in Tucson, a road game for Arizona State, it is recipe for disaster. Is Arizona State the better team? Yes. Does Arizona have a better 2 players in Tet McMillan and Noah Fafita? Probably. But statistically, Sam Levitt has been right there. Fafita's got 12 interceptions this season. That's not very good. And Cam Scatterbo will be the best player on the field, most likely. But, rivalry game. That porous defense on 3rd and 4th down. There's something in the air. I'm leaning Arizona. Gut feeling. Magic 8 ball. Give me Arizona. TCU, Cincinnati. Horned Frogs minus 3.5, and I'm going to take it. They get it done behind Josh Hoover. Jack Beck, it's been really good this season. 1,000-yard wide receiver. Cincinnati's on a downtrend. We can't really, the metrics aren't going to tell you if a team has momentum or if a team's given up. And I think Cincinnati, while they can get to a bowl game, just doesn't have enough in the tank. When the ball kicks off at 5 East, 5 Central, I should say, to win this. I'm going with TCU on the road. Kansas State, Iowa State. Back and forth on this all week long. Ran the metrics. Asked God. Did everything. This is Kansas State's game. While I will be in attendance at Jack Trice Stadium, I will be rooting for both teams in my Big 12 hoodie. If I had to pick a winner here, kind of based on what happened last season, the revenge aspect, Avery Johnson and Chris Kleiman feeling as though this Kansas State season wasn't up to par with what they wanted it to be. I'm going to side with Kansas State. A freezing cold game and one that should be so evenly matched. I know both fan bases would agree at the very least on that. An Iowa State team that the only real rub that I have is their defense is 37th in the country against the rush, and Kansas State is 14th in the nation running the football. That is going to be tough. Iowa State 87th defensively on 3rd and 4th down in the nation. Kansas State 53rd offensively. That is a 34-spot gap. That gives the Wildcats the edge. Final score in this game, Kansas State 24. Iowa State 20. BYU, Houston. Ask the computer. They say it's a BYU blowout. I don't think so. We get to the end of the night, and if you follow these scores, BYU has a chance to lock themselves into the college football playoff. I say that, the Big 12 championship, and with a win, the college football playoff. BYU defeats Houston. I'm off my track. All my best bets I've thrown out the window. I started thinking about these games and thinking, gosh dang, it's the Big 12. We don't beat teams into submission like we project on the computer. BYU wins. Offense struggles. Shocking, I know. 20-17 in Provo, and let them rush the field if they want. The Cougars, who have been middling, win and go to the Big 12 championship. If you followed along with all those scores, it is BYU and Colorado. That is who I've narrowed it down. It is BYU and Colorado. We deserve that. We asked for that. At the end of these 48 hours, we will see BYU and Colorado in the Big 12 championship. Now, it's a bold prediction. I mean, what insider baseball do I have? Just a guy with a microphone telling you what I think. But if I had to call it, those are my horses. That's what I think is going to happen today. That's what I have playing out in the Big 12. I'm going to go Colorado over Oklahoma State tight. Utah upsets UCF on the road. Kansas over Baylor in Waco. West Virginia over Texas Tech in Lubbock. Arizona over Arizona State in Tucson. TCU beats Cincinnati on the road. Kansas State gets a win in Ames, Iowa on Fox. Then that BYU team. The team that we said was a team of destiny a couple weeks ago. They don't cover 13, but they beat Houston tight at LES. And we see Colorado and the Cougars of BYU square off in Arlington next weekend. So it is written. Coming up, we're going to the playoff on Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This has been, it always will be, a show that's brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is, I don't think I can express to you how happy I am with Game Time right now, because I really wanted to go see the Under the Sky Festival in Montana, in Whitefish, Montana. And I said, Game Time, could you please give me tickets to the Under the Sky Festival in Whitefish, Montana? And Game Time says we have the lowest prices, guaranteed, or we'll credit you 110% of the difference. I said, Game Time, that's good. I'm going to buy it from you. And I did. I had a seat view. I had not just the lowest price guaranteed, but the most flexible ticketing coverage options in the industry. And with Game Time, I was able to build a dream trip for next summer. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It is game time. Tulane is dead. The Wicked Witch of the South. The Green Wave is no longer. They have fallen to Memphis, and they now will miss the college football playoff, opening a lane for the Big 12 to secure, finally, a very guaranteed spot in the CFP. I don't care if you're Iowa State or BYU or Baylor or Colorado or West Virginia. You're going, baby. There are 12 teams, and this system has already been proved to be a pretty bad system for placing those teams, that the top 5 conference champions where they need to be, will not fail us yet. Tulane losing to Memphis does this. For Memphis, they're a 2-loss AAC team. I'm sure, okay, great. I don't think they're not going to replace a Big 12 team, and they're not going to play for the AAC championship still. And for Tulane, you look at Tulane, you're like, okay, now they've lost to Memphis. We know they lost to Kansas State, and now they can't be a top 20 team. They lost to a Memphis team who was unranked and also had multiple losses in the AAC. That's not very good either. So the Big 12, whoever it might be, has to be ranked above the winner of the AAC and go to the college football playoff. I don't care who it is. When you secure the Big 12 championship victory, you secure the opportunity to play in the college football playoff. And what I'm so upset about is these fools, these ignoramuses, these idiots, if you will, shield the ears of your children of the college football playoff committee, have gotten this thing entirely backward. They asked the Lin-Manuel guy, Miranda, about the playoff committee director, like, hey, so what about Boise State? They barely beat Wyoming. And the first words out of his mouth were, yeah, well, we only care about that W word, that win word, which I've been saying for months. If you're 11-1 and your non-conference, calling you the SEC, features ULM, Mercer, Western Kentucky, and you're a Big 12 team, and you beat all those three, then you're going to go to the college football playoff at 11-1. They value wins. They do not value your opponent. They do not value your strength of schedule. There has not been a single piece of rhetoric that's come from the college football playoff committee to say, hey, we care about how you win these games. No, they told us. They told us they care about one thing, and that's a win. Wyoming's 2-9. And this idiot from the college football playoff committee comes to the podium and says, well, we have coaches on our committee, which is a strong word to call that room of people. We have coaches on our committee who have played in Laramie, had their teams play in Laramie, and they said it's very tough to compete there, no matter the record of Wyoming. Buddy, BYU went there and beat the doors off of them, blew them out of the water. And Boise State struggled to win by less than a touchdown. How about Boise State's 7-point win against Nevada? But we might have to keep the Big 12 out because Tulane is there. No, this just was the stupidest rhetoric possible from so many of these talking heads. And now Lane Kiffin wants to come out and say, well, did you know that if any of the Big 12 teams played in the SEC, that they wouldn't win any games? We have a winning record against the SEC since 2021. Oh, the SEC is in this heyday of college football. The SEC is as good as ever. The SEC is the best conference in college. We have a winning record. It's not even just, you can be like, okay, well, historically the SEC is better. Sure, I don't care. But in recent memory, for this dominant Georgia teams, these dominant LSUs, these dominant Alabamas, the Big 12 is beating you. And now it's, 9-3 Ole Miss. I'm Lane Kiffin and my team stinks. I should get to go to the college football playoff, not the Big 12 teams who deserve it. Not the deepest conference in America. It's certainly not the Big 10. Those guys, you get past 4 teams, like, oh my gosh, everyone here reeks. It's certainly not the SEC. You get past like 2 teams, and no one makes any sense. And it's not, I've told you this before. In the Big 12, it's not like this really bad team. Like, it's not like a team that has zero, in the SEC, you have like an Arkansas or a Mississippi State or even a Kentucky, who they're just kind of bad. It's not like, we saw flashes this week of a team that's well improved. No, there's no consistency to it. In the Big 12, when you lose to Kansas, it's because Kansas has the horses in the stable. They're playing really good football right now. In the SEC, when you lose to Arkansas, it's like, we don't really know why that happened. They've sucked the entire year. Your conference doesn't get to be better than us for that. And now with a Tulane loss, we're in. What I think does stink is that we will have a lack of opportunities compared to the Big 10 and the SEC. So what if Iowa State gets in? They're an 11 seed. They get a tough first-round matchup. They go on the road against Georgia, and they lose. On the road against Texas, and they lose. You think, that was our one shot. They had to play a true road game against a tough opponent, and now we're out of this. It shouldn't be an indictment on the conference when everybody else gets to lose as many games as they want and walk into the college football playoff. What I do love is the conference is speaking out. Like even the Big 12 is tweeting at Nick Saban, talking about how ridiculous this entire thing is. And for that, with all of that, like with Wyoming at 2-9, giving Boise State a real run for their money, with the SEC not being able to compete with the Big 12 the last couple of years, this rhetoric is just stupid. Sorry for my crass language. But the Wicked Witch is dead. Tulane is dead. Now what, huh? Now, is Memphis going to make it over the Big 12? We're gonna make up new teams. Hawaii's improved this year. We should give them a spot over us, right? USF's in a good recruiting base. They could probably take that 12 seed. I don't know. We saw a salty game out of Wyoming last week. 2-9, sure, but we should at least consider them, right? Laramie's a tough place to play. According to the playoff committee leader, commissioner, or whatever you want to call him, if you send somebody to play at Wyoming in round 1, it's anybody's ball game. That's a tough place to play in Laramie. Tulane. Thanks, man. That rocks. Now, we still have some business to take care of, no doubt. I will not deny that. But this was a great first step. Thank you, Green Wave. You are my only hope. Be happy. Let's play some college football. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, where this weekend I will celebrate with my family. And then I will drive to Ames, Iowa, and I will say, I think Iowa State's going to win this football game. Iowa State -2.5. Give it to me at FanDuel.com. You put $5 down today and you hit that bet, you get $150 in bonus bets, which is good. That's good. That's right, $5 down and you hit the bet, you get $150 in bonus bets at FanDuel.com. Live bets. You can look at live play-by-play, view the box score and live stats. All in one place, the FanDuel app. You download it today. You utilize FanDuel.com. It's going to be good for you, man. Just trust me on this one. FanDuel.com. It's your place to go. It's your place to be. FanDuel.com, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. This holiday season, we cannot forget that the Big 12, Brett Yormark, stole what was rightfully ours and easily could have been the crux of our conference, the magnum opus of what our league does every year. The king, the crown jewel of exposure is gone. And that is rivalry week. Imagine this. This is a tweet from Throwback Frog where he argues that rivalry week would fix the entire exposure issue of the Big 12. Brett Yormark said no to this. BYU and Utah. Kansas State, Iowa State, which thank God we get. TCU against Baylor. Arizona State, Arizona, we also get. Texas Tech and Oklahoma State. Kansas and Colorado, West Virginia and Cincinnati, UCF and Houston. It is almost too logical to play the biggest games in the conference, the most meaningful games in the conference on the last weekend of the season. Brett Yormark came out when he built the schedule and said, we're going to do things our own way. We don't want to get bumped by Alabama and Auburn. We don't want to get bumped. We want to have our biggest games showcased on weekends where they can shine. Well, nay, I say, Brett Yormark, on this, a day of thanks. I am thankful for those big matchups, but I am unthankful, ungrateful for when they were placed. Imagine this. You're looking live, Rice-Eccles Stadium. The 9-2 BYU Cougars against the upset-hungry Utah Utes. That would be so much cooler than, so we're here. BYU's playing Houston, I think. You know, the luster of rivalry week. What about Kansas State, Iowa State this weekend? What you do get with that, there's a reason, okay? Let me unpack a bit here. I'm going to leave Valonia, Arkansas on Saturday at 5:30 in the morning to drive to Ames, Iowa to watch that game. Why? Rivalry, ranked game, Big 12 championship on the line for both teams. Why wouldn't I go there? But what if there was a choice? What if there were games across the conference where it was me thinking, should I go see BYU, Utah? Should I go see Kansas State, Iowa State? Should I go see Baylor, TCU? Because one of those teams is still somehow in the hunt. We don't get that. We don't get this pent up, everybody hates everybody for one weekend. We do Thanksgiving on Thursday, and then when Friday kicks off, you best bet Baylor and TCU are at noon. Then Texas Tech and Oklahoma State, who really don't like each other, are at 3:30. And then Kansas and Colorado, which is kind of a weird rivalry, but it's left over from the old Big 12, and they're not really friends. And they both were pretty bad at football for a long time, but it's cool that they hate each other. That's at 7:30. Instead, we get Cincinnati and TCU. What? That's not the spirit of the weekend. Today we were supposed to rejoice. Tomorrow we relish in football. We get Memphis and Tulane tonight. Ha ha ha. But what we don't get are the quintessential Big 12 rivalries. And you could argue, say, Drake, there are no quintessential Big 12 rivalries. Like rivalries. Like 3 of these games matter. 3 of these are actually, we hate that other team. Well, you know what? There's only one way to fix that. By building in a rivalry weekend. And maybe I wouldn't be so upset with Brett Yormark if he had done if he had the courage to do the right thing and built a rivalry week last week or 2 weeks ago where everybody plays their rival. Aha! How fun. We know that week 12 every year, the Big 12 has BYU and Utah and Kansas and Colorado and even UCF and Houston. But no, we just sprinkle them throughout the season. You have the opportunity for a massive day of PR on the last day of the season where the most consequential matchups are rivalry matchups. Farmageddon, to the Revivalry, to the Holy War, to the Continental Divide, and even what has been coined by Throwback Frog, the Space Race, UCF and Houston. Those two teams don't hate each other. But if we place them on a rivalry weekend where everybody else is playing their rivals, I bet they'll start to hate each other more. Oh, you can't force it. You can. I've seen it. Grew up an Arkansas fan. We didn't give a rat's butt about Missouri. But then one day, some genius came along and was like, you know what? Arkansas LSU battle for the boot. That rivalry game was no longer the last weekend of the year. Now it's Arkansas and Missouri in the borderline battle or whatever they called it. Oh, that's stupid. But then as stupid as we thought it was, Missouri started winning every single one of those games. And Arkansas fans are like, this sucks. We don't like them by virtue of the fact that we keep losing to them. You can build that kind of exposure. For a game that doesn't matter to the entire country, let's make it matter. Instead of giving them Oklahoma State and Colorado. Those two teams aren't really related. They used to play in the old Big 12, but it doesn't tickle my fancy. It doesn't make me happy to watch that this weekend. And you've nailed it with a couple. You just showed me you could do it with Iowa State and Kansas State, with Arizona State. But I'm not here to watch Kansas and Baylor. I'm excited for that game. Utah and UCF. I'm excited for those games, but they shouldn't be on rivalry week. We're just going to fold it in. We're going to pack in camp. All right, good to see you guys. Great to have everybody here. We're not going to do rivalry week. We're going to let everybody else do that. We're going to do our own thing because we don't feel like we can compete with their rivalry weeks. No. Do you not bring the cranberry sauce? Do you not bring the sweet potatoes just because you think it'll be overshadowed by the broccoli and cheese casserole, by the macaroni and cheese, by the rolls? Of course not. You still bring the cranberry sauce to the table and you let it compete. You let it fight. And sometimes it wins. Yeah, everybody wants to eat the turkey. I know. But the ham's still there. Don't pack the ham in and save it for Christmas. Bring the ham for those who want to eat the ham. I think ham is objectively better than turkey. I say objectively as if that wasn't the most subjective statement of all time. That's what I want. We, the Big 12, might not be the turkey, but by God, we're at least the ham. And the ham should be there. Never forget what they took from you. Don't. You deserved this. You deserved a Thanksgiving weekend, a Black Friday, a rivalry Saturday, packed with Big 12 games. That is my soapbox. I stand upon it. I say, why, Brett Yormark, why? You did this to us, and you canceled Farmageddon being a yearly thing. Ugh. I can only pray for new expansion in this conference so that the schedule is all switched around and you fix this, what you've done. That's it. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I hope you know that I'm rooting for you. Whoever you are, I hope you're rooting for me. I don't even know what that meant. This has been and always will be Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Dose Grande. I'm going to mull it out.